Everything begins in the mind. Before any action, before any decision, before any result, there is a thought. Most people never question this. They move through life reacting to what they feel, believing every thought that appears and following it without resistance. And because of that, their lives feel uncontrolled, unpredictable, driven by external circumstances. But Stoicism teaches something different. It teaches that your thoughts are not commands. They are suggestions, and you have the ability to accept them or reject them. The moment you understand this, control begins. Because if you can control your thoughts, you can control your reactions. If you control your reactions, you control your actions. And if you control your actions, you begin to shape your entire life. This is where real power exists, not in controlling the outside world, but in mastering what happens within you. Most people try to fix their life by changing circumstances, but Stoicism focuses on something deeper, the source, the mind itself. When the mind is undisciplined, everything feels unstable. But when the mind is clear, controlled, directed with intention, everything begins to align. This is the foundation. Control your thoughts, and everything else follows. Every result you experience begins with a thought. Not the situation, not other people, not circumstances. The thought. Most people overlook this. They assume their life is shaped by what happens around them. But in reality, it is shaped by how they interpret what happens. Two people can face the same situation and respond in completely different ways. One remains steady, the other becomes overwhelmed. The difference is not the situation, it is the thought that follows it. This is where control begins. When you understand that your thoughts are not automatic truths, but mental reactions that can be observed and directed. Without awareness, the mind operates on habit. It repeats patterns. It reacts based on past experiences. It creates assumptions without verification. And over time, these patterns form your reality. If your thoughts are negative, your perception becomes limited. If your thoughts are reactive, your actions become impulsive. If your thoughts are undisciplined, your life feels unstable. But when you begin to observe your thoughts, you create distance. You stop identifying with every idea that appears in your mind. Instead, you examine it. You question it. You decide whether it deserves your attention. This simple shift changes everything, because now you are no longer being controlled by your mind. You are directing it. There is a moment between a thought appearing and you acting on it. Most people ignore this moment. They move immediately from thought to action. But a disciplined mind uses that moment. It pauses. It evaluates. It chooses. Over time, this practice builds control. Less influenced by sudden emotions. Less dependent on external triggers. Your actions become intentional. Your decisions become clear. And your life begins to reflect that clarity. Another important factor is repetition. The thoughts you allow repeatedly become your default thinking pattern, and your default thinking pattern shapes your behavior. This is why discipline at the level of thought is critical. You do not need to control every thought perfectly, but you must control which thoughts you accept, which thoughts you reinforce, which thoughts you act upon. Because over time, these choices define your direction. When your thinking is structured, your actions become consistent. When your actions are consistent, your results become predictable. And this creates stability. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become more controlled within it. Your thoughts are the starting point of everything. If you leave them unchecked, they will lead you without direction. But if you learn to guide them, you begin to guide your entire life. Control begins with clarity. Without it, the mind becomes scattered, pulled in different directions, reacting to everything, trying to manage what was never yours to manage. Most people feel overwhelmed, not because life is too complex, but because they are focused on the wrong things. They try to control outcomes, they try to control other people, they try to control how they are perceived, and when those things do not respond, frustration appears. This is where Stoicism creates a sharp division. There are things within your control and things outside of it. Your thoughts, your actions, your decisions, these belong to you. The behavior of others, the timing of events, the final outcome, these do not. The mistake most people make is treating both categories the same. They invest energy where it has no effect, and neglect where it actually matters. A disciplined mind does the opposite. It draws a clear boundary. It does not blur the line. It does not argue with reality. Instead, it accepts the structure of control and operates within it. When something happens, the first question becomes simple. Is this within my control? If the answer is yes, you act with precision. You take responsibility. You focus completely. If the answer is no, you release it immediately. Not later, not after frustration, immediately. This is where most people struggle, because releasing feels like losing control, but in reality, it is the highest form of control on what does not respond to it. You are choosing discipline over reaction. Over time, this creates mental efficiency. Your focus becomes sharper. Your energy becomes directed. You are no longer scattered across multiple concerns. You are concentrated on what actually moves your life forward. There is also emotional stability in this clarity. When you stop trying to control everything, you stop reacting to everything. Delays no longer disturb you. Opinions no longer define you. Outcomes no longer control your state of mind, because your attention is fixed on what you can influence directly. This creates consistency, and consistency creates strength. You begin to trust your process, not because it guarantees results, but because it is within your control. Control is not about expanding your reach. It is about narrowing your focus, removing what does not belong, and mastering what does. When you do this, your mind becomes clear. Your actions become effective. Control is not only about what you do, it is about what you allow. Every day, your mind is exposed to constant input. Noise, opinions, information, distractions that demand your attention. And without discipline, your focus becomes fragmented. You begin one task, then shift to another. Your thoughts move quickly, but without direction. This is not a lack of ability. It is a lack of control. Stoicism teaches that your attention is one of your most valuable resources, because whatever holds your attention shapes your thinking. And whatever shapes your thinking shapes your actions. Most people treat attention casually. They allow anything to enter their mind. They react to every notification. They follow every impulse. And over time, this creates a scattered mental state. A disciplined mind does the opposite. It filters, it selects, it decides what deserves focus and what does not. This begins with awareness. You start noticing what pulls your attention away. Small interruptions, unnecessary thoughts, external distractions that serve no purpose. And instead of reacting automatically, you make a decision. You either engage or you ignore. This is control. Not eliminating distractions completely, but refusing to be controlled by them. Over time, this builds focus. Your mind becomes less reactive, less scattered. You are able to stay with one thought, one action, one direction, and this creates depth. Most people operate on the surface, because their attention never stays in one place long enough. But when you control your focus, you go deeper. You think more clearly. You act more effectively. You complete what you start. There is also a form of mental protection here. Not everything deserves space in your mind. Negative input, unnecessary opinions, constant noise, these weaken your clarity if left unchecked. When you guard your mind, you choose what enters, and more importantly, what stays. This creates stability. Your thinking becomes structured, your attention becomes intentional, and your actions reflect that discipline. Control is not just about doing more. It is about allowing less. Less distraction, less noise, less unnecessary input, because when your mind is clear, your direction becomes clear. The moment you depend on external validation, you lose control. Not immediately, not obviously, but gradually, your thinking begins to shift. Your decisions are no longer based on clarity, but on how they will be received. You begin to measure your actions through the opinions of others, and without realizing it, your mind is no longer your own. Stoicism challenges this completely. It teaches that your value does not come from external approval. It comes from internal alignment, from acting in accordance with your principles, not reactions. Most people seek validation because it creates temporary certainty, a sense of being right, a sense of being accepted. But this certainty is unstable, because it depends on something that constantly changes. Opinions shift, perceptions vary, approval is never consistent. When your mind depends on this, it becomes reactive. You adjust your behavior to maintain acceptance. You hesitate to act without reassurance. You question yourself unnecessarily. This weakens control, because your thoughts are no longer grounded in your own judgment. They are influenced by external feedback. A disciplined mind operates differently. It does not ignore others completely, but it does not depend on them. It evaluates internally first. It asks a simple question. Is this aligned with my principles? Not, will this be approved? This shift restores control, because now your decisions are stable. They are not changing based on every opinion. They are guided by something consistent. Over time, this builds confidence. Not loud confidence, not visible confidence. The ability to act without needing permission. The ability to remain steady, even when others disagree. There is also a form of mental freedom here. When you stop seeking validation, you stop overthinking how you are perceived. You stop adjusting your identity to match expectations. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. This reduces mental noise. It simplifies your thinking. It strengthens your focus. And most importantly, it returns control back to you. In the end, validation is not control. It is dependency. Control comes from within, from knowing your direction and following it without hesitation. When you reach this point, your thoughts become stable. Your actions become consistent. The most important conversation in your life is the one happening inside your mind. It is constant, quiet, often unnoticed, but it shapes everything. Most people never take control of this dialogue. They allow it to run automatically, repeating doubts, reinforcing fears, questioning decisions. And over time, this undisciplined thinking weakens them. Stoicism teaches that your inner dialogue must be trained. Not ignored, not suppressed, but directed. Because every thought you repeat becomes a belief, and every belief influences your behavior. If your inner voice is uncertain, your actions will reflect hesitation. If your inner voice is negative, your perception will become limited. If your inner voice is undisciplined, your life will feel unstable. Control begins by listening, not reacting immediately, but observing what you are telling yourself. Is it clear? Is it useful? Is it aligned with reality? Most of the time it is not. It is repetitive, emotional, unstructured. A disciplined mind corrects this. It does not allow every thought to continue. It interrupts what is unnecessary. It replaces what is weak. It reinforces what is strong. This is not motivation. It is control. You are deciding what kind of thinking is allowed to stay. Over time, this creates a new pattern. Your internal voice becomes clear, direct, stable. It does not panic under pressure. It does not collapse under difficulty. It remains structured. Your actions. In the end, your outer life follows your inner dialogue. Discipline it, and everything else begins to align. A chaotic mind creates a chaotic life, not because of external conditions, but because of internal disorder. Thoughts without structure lead to confusion. Confusion leads to hesitation. Hesitation leads to inaction. Stoicism emphasizes order, not rigid control, but clear structure. A structured mind knows what matters. It prioritizes correctly. It does not jump from one idea to another. It moves with direction. Most people lack this. Their thinking is scattered. They focus on multiple things at once. They change direction frequently, and as a result, progress becomes inconsistent. Control requires simplification. You define what is important. You remove what is not. You organize your thinking around clear priorities. This reduces mental noise. It increases clarity. It strengthens focus. Over time, your mind becomes efficient. You think less, but more effectively. You act with precision, and your results reflect that structure. In the end, order in the mind creates order in life. Most people believe they are thinking, but in reality, they are reacting, instantly, automatically, without awareness. Something happens. A word is spoken. A situation changes. And the mind responds immediately. Emotion rises, judgment forms, action follows. This entire process happens in seconds. And in those seconds, control is either gained or completely lost. Stoicism focuses on one critical skill: the ability to pause. Not a long pause, not hesitation, just enough space to break the automatic cycle. Between what happens and how you respond, there is a moment. Small, almost invisible. But that moment is where discipline exists. Most people ignore it. They move directly from stimulus to reaction. They speak without thinking. They act without clarity. And later, they deal with the consequences. A disciplined mind does something different. It interrupts the process. It notices the reaction forming and chooses not to follow it immediately. This creates control, because now your actions are not driven by impulse, they are chosen. There is a difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is automatic, fast, emotional. Response is controlled, deliberate, clear. Slowing down your reactions does not make you weak. It makes you precise. You are no longer pulled by every external trigger. You remain steady, focused, in control. Conversations, decisions, pressure, conflict. When someone speaks, you do not rush to respond. You listen. You process. You choose your words carefully. When a situation becomes difficult, you do not react emotionally. You step back internally. You assess. You act with intention. Over time, this changes your behavior completely. You become less reactive, less impulsive, less controlled by external events. Your presence becomes calm, stable, measured. And this creates strength. Not visible strength, but internal control. Another important effect is the reduction of regret. Most mistakes are not made with intention. They are made in reaction. Words spoken too quickly, actions taken without thinking, decisions made under emotion. When you slow down, you eliminate these patterns. You act with awareness. Awareness prevents unnecessary errors. In the end, control is not about stopping action. It is about controlling the timing of action. Acting too quickly removes clarity. Acting with pause creates precision, and precision creates control. So when the next moment comes, and the reaction begins to rise, do not follow it immediately. Pause, observe, choose. Because in that small moment, you decide who is in control. Not every thought that enters your mind deserves your attention. Yet most people treat every thought as if it carries importance. They follow it, analyze it, expand it, and slowly they become controlled by it. This is where clarity is lost, not because the mind is weak, but because it is undisciplined. Stoicism teaches a critical distinction. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of them. This understanding changes everything. Because once you see thoughts as separate from yourself, you gain the ability to choose which ones to follow and which ones to ignore. Without this awareness, the mind operates automatically. Thoughts appear, and you engage with them instantly. A worry becomes a chain of overthinking. A doubt becomes hesitation. A negative idea becomes a belief. And over time, these repeated patterns shape your reality, not because they are true, but because they are repeated. This is the danger of unnecessary thinking. It consumes energy without creating progress. It creates noise without providing clarity. It gives the illusion of control while actually weakening it. A disciplined mind approaches thoughts differently. It does not chase every idea. It does not react to every mental impulse. It observes first. Always. A thought appears, and instead of following it, you pause, you examine it, you ask, is this useful? Is this within my control? Does this deserve my attention? Most thoughts fail this test. Are repetitive, emotional, unnecessary. And once you recognize that, you release them. Not forcefully, not with resistance. simply by not engaging. This is where true control begins. Because attention is what gives thoughts power. Without attention, they fade. But with attention, they grow. Most people strengthen the wrong thoughts. They revisit problems repeatedly. They replay conversations. They imagine outcomes that may never happen. And in doing so, they create mental weight. A disciplined mind removes this weight, not by eliminating thinking, but by filtering it. Only useful thoughts are allowed to remain. Everything else is released. Over time, this creates mental clarity. Your mind becomes quieter, not empty, but controlled. There is space between thoughts, space for awareness, space for deliberate thinking. This space is powerful because it allows you to act without confusion, without noise, without internal conflict. Another important aspect of detachment is emotional control. Many emotions are not caused directly by events, but by the thoughts that follow them. A situation happens, and the mind creates a narrative. That narrative creates emotion, and that emotion influences action. Are less affected by random thoughts, less distracted by mental noise, less overwhelmed by internal activity. Your focus sharpens. Your thinking becomes intentional. Your actions become precise. There is also freedom in this discipline, because when you are no longer attached to every thought, you are no longer controlled by them. You are not pulled into unnecessary thinking. You are not trapped in mental loops. You are not reacting to imagined problems. You remain present, grounded, focused on what matters. In the end, detachment is not about avoiding thought, it is about mastering it, choosing what deserves your attention, and refusing everything else. Because control is not built by thinking more, but by thinking with precision. And when your mind reaches that level of control, nothing unnecessary remains to disturb it. Control is not proven when things are easy. It is revealed when things become difficult. When pressure increases, when outcomes are uncertain, when situations do not go as planned, that is where your mind is tested. Most people lose control in these moments, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack stability. Their thoughts shift with circumstances, their emotions react to outcomes, their actions become inconsistent, and as a result, their life becomes unstable. Stoicism aims for something different, not temporary control, but permanent structure. A mental core that does not change based on what is happening outside. This is not built in a single moment. It is built through repetition, through daily discipline, through consistent awareness. Every time you observe a thought instead of reacting, you strengthen it. Every time you pause instead of responding impulsively, you reinforce it. Every time you choose clarity over emotion, you build it. Over time, these small actions create something powerful. Stability. A state where your mind does not collapse under pressure. Where your thinking remains clear even in uncertainty. Where your actions remain consistent, regardless of outcome. This is what it means to be unshakable. Not that life becomes easy, but that you remain steady within it. There is a difference between reacting to life and standing firm within it. Most people are moved by everything. Opinions influence them, situations disturb them, outcomes define their state of mind. But a disciplined mind remains centered, but it is not controlled by it. This creates a different kind of power, not loud, not visible, but deeply rooted. The ability to remain calm when others become reactive. The ability to think clearly when others become overwhelmed. The ability to act precisely when others lose direction. This is control at its highest level, and it changes everything. Because once your mind becomes stable, your life follows that stability. Your decisions become consistent, your behavior becomes reliable, your direction becomes clear. You are no longer dependent on motivation. You are guided by discipline. You are no longer reacting to circumstances. You are operating from structure. And this creates long-term results. Not temporary progress, but lasting control. In the end, nothing outside you is fully controllable. Situations will change. People will act unpredictably. Outcomes will not always match your expectations. But your mind can remain steady through all of it. That is the goal, not to control everything, but to become someone who is not controlled by anything. And when you reach that point, when your thoughts are disciplined, your reactions are controlled, your focus is clear, your mind becomes untouchable, not because life is perfect, but because you are stable within it.